Moonlight spilled in silver ribbons across the dense forest, tangling in the broad roots and moss-laden stones as if to bind Vespera tighter than the chains on her wrists. Her breath was jagged with the jostling march, half from the cold and half from the furious injustice boiling beneath her skin. Behind her back, iron links bit her flesh raw. Above her, the boughs swayed as the wind carried the thick bruise of anticipation toward the moon court. They had not bothered with any mercy. Her own pack, blood and kin, or so she'd believed, had cast their accusing eyes upon her that afternoon and declared judgment before any verdict. Betrayer, they'd called her traitor. The accusation echoed now with every stumble, searing worse than fire, for they'd not just believed her guilty, they'd wanted her gone, delivered as an offering to those outside her clan, to the Alpha King himself. Torchlight flared ahead, growing brighter as the forest yielded to a wide clearing. Yellow flames prowled along a perimeter of stone columns, each one painted with the legends of the Moon Court, the stories of the first wolves, of ascension and blood and curses. In their flicker, hundreds of faces swam, strangers from distant packs and proud lines. They were gathered for the blood moon, every shoulder draped with pelts, each gold eye shining with unsated hunger. The guards at her side shoved her forward. She slid in slick mud, her knees barked in protest. Around her, the crowd shifted, sniffed the wind, eyed her with a scorn that was almost physical. Under the high, watching moon, Vespera was a lamb cast into the den of wolves. Caelron, Alpha King, sat at the heart of the festivities, a throne built of antlers and blackened iron, framed by a semicircle of his most loyal enforcers. Even from here she could feel the weight of his gaze, an ancient ferocity that anchored the entire court. The torchlight scythed across his features, cruelly handsome, more beast than man. His cloak was wolfskin, silvered like the moon itself, and when he rose even the night seemed to cower. Vespera's heart hammered a wild tempo. She tried to stand, to claim what little dignity remained, but the chains were heavy, and her limbs shook with cold. The raucous revels stilled at her approach, conversation lapsing into a hush that pressed against her eardrums. All eyes surged toward her, hundreds of strangers, some barely restraining their shift into something more feral. A woman to her left, dressed in ceremonial silver and crowned with thorn, spat to the ground. "Blood traitor," she muttered, loud enough that those near Vespera recoiled as if her doom were contagious. Vespera kept her chin elevated, eyes dry but burning. The weight of her clan's betrayal pressed against her ribs, threatening to collapse her breath, but she would not give the court any satisfaction. She catalogued scents: pine, old smoke, blood, the musky promise of fur and teeth. Beneath it all, dread worked like a serpent through her veins. The drums began, a slow, thunderous rhythm. The crowd's tension thickened with every beat. Pack banners flapped on tall poles. On the air, a metallic tang hinted at the sacrifices to come. The first wolf howled, a wild note, swelling and then fracturing as the rest joined in, dozens, and then hundreds, a chorus rising to rattle the stars themselves. Vespera's escort didn't loosen their hold, but they hesitated as Caelron fixed his golden gaze on them. She saw the subtle tilt of his head, the imperceptible twitch at his jaw. She'd heard rumors of his temper, his unschooled mountain spirit, but seeing it now, so close, new fear rolled through her. He raised his scepter, a mottled artifact crowned with the skull of a wolf. "Under the blood moon," he announced, voice rolling over the crowd like thunder, "we gather to judge and to renew. All debts to the moon are paid in truth or in blood." The crowd grew silent, as if the forest itself had sunk to its knees. Keelron's eyes roamed her, lingering on the chains. "Bring forth the accused," he commanded. The guards pushed her to the center of the circle. Torchlight stung her eyes, a sticky heat crawled up her neck. The festival's revels had gone silent, replaced by 1,000 unblinking gazes. She would not beg. Vespera fought to keep her breath even, fighting the tremor in her voice. The drums faded into a hollow emptiness. The Alpha King seemed to expand, his shadow stretching, the beast inside him pressing forward with every passing second. A man near the dais called out her crime. She delivered secrets to the witchwood. Our weakest were slain in the night. Only she was missing from the pack. "The price is death, my king." Her name, Vespera, daughter of Tile, was spat as a curse. She felt herself shrink and bristle all at once. She rehearsed, in her mind, the one absolute truth. I did not. No matter what they say, I did not. Keilron's mouth curled into something between disdain and curiosity. He addressed the crowd, but his voice hooked her inescapably. "If any accused among us wish to claim innocence, now is the hour. Kneel. Speak." His words were ritual, weighty, predictive, leaving no room for uncertainty. Silence. The world seemed to slow, stretching the moment to near breaking. Vespera stood still, her chains a metallic echo, with every pulse of blood through her veins. "Kneel!" cried the silver-crowned woman, voice poisonous with expectation. Vespera met Keilron's gaze, straight and unswerving, the fire of her defiance branding her lips. She did not kneel. She did not speak. She let only the smallest movement betray her resolution. A flick of her chin, a tightening about her mouth, eyes blazing with bruised fury. The air thickened until the only sound was the hush of held breath. Even the younger wolves, impulsive and easily roused, shifted uncertainly in their skins. Several bared their teeth, but none lunged. The Alpha King's beast prowled at the surface, so palpable she felt it clawing at her skin, but he too seemed surprised. Something in her, some line drawn in invisible blood, stayed the pack. For seconds that ticked into an eternity, nothing moved. Then Keilron's hand flicked, and the guards snapped upright. "Take her," he growled, voice raw with something unspoken. Vespera did not flinch as the circle converged, as the pack closed like a snare. Her last sight before being dragged away was the Alpha King. Amber gaze narrowed, claws retracted, but his posture carefully, dangerously still. Asterisk her cell was hewn into the roots of the great moonstone tree, more tomb than prison. The air sat heavy with moss and ancient damp. Iron bars scored with old claw marks completed the effect. They thrust her inside and locked the door with the farting squeal of protest, the clang reverberating through marrow. Cold bit instantly, gnawing her skin raw, and the ache in her limbs intensified with each passing moment. She measured her breaths, forced herself to sit, back pressed hard against the jagged wall. Nearly everything she owned, clothing, pride, trust, had been stripped away. Only her memories remained, turning uninvited, a carousel of everything lost. Beyond the cell, the moon court howled. The sound was primal, surging and ebbing like a distant tide, a dirge that made her gut twist, a softer sound, closer. In one dusky corner, near the runoff of a broken drain, a small wolf pup cowered. Mud streaked its brindled fur. Its hind leg jutted at an unnatural angle. Shallow whimpers floated in the small space between fear and exhaustion. The pup must have been left in the confusion, or perhaps it was a test, a bloody sort of joke. The guards outside, faceless brutes, sons of unknown packs, leaned against the wooden stone, their voices low and indifferent. Vespera's heart stuttered, then beat with a new clarity. She moved slowly, mindful of the chains, every rustle making the pup shrink further. Her hands stank of iron and humiliation, but she softened her voice to a lullaby she barely remembered, something her mother had once sung over bruises and nightmares. The melody wove between them, hesitant at first, then steadier as trust grew. "There now, little one," she murmured, lips moving as if conjuring an old spell. "The moon is watching. She will not let the shadows have you." Her fingers found the edge of the pup's fur, patient and unpressing. The pup stilled, eyes wide and glazed with pain. A faint nudge, its cold nose against her hand, a tremulous shiver. Vespera worked carefully, humming, stripping debris clear from the wound. The pup whimpered, but when her hands lingered long enough, it laid its head on her knee, as though surrendering to a gentleness denied by the world above ground. The guards, at first exchanging uneasy glances, soon averted their eyes entirely, perhaps unable to reconcile predator and prey in such intimate proximity. Somewhere beyond the cell, at the juncture of torchlight and shadow, a figure lingered, Caelron. She could feel his presence even before his boots scuffed the stone, the silence he carried leaching colour from the air itself. He watched her with a kind of disbelief, the Alpha King, the monster of every fireside tale, peering in at a traitor's mercy. Perhaps he expected her to strike the pup or bare her teeth in some last desperate act. Instead, Vespera dulled the edge of cruelty, her song trailing down until the pup's breath steadied, its panic stilled by her presence. Caelron said nothing, but the hush he left behind was heavier than thunder. The next day arrived hidden in grey cloud and sullen light. The howl of wolves at dawn was leavened now with a different rumour, that the accused had calmed a wounded beast, had sung it to sleep in a cell meant for suffering. The servants who shuffled through the lower halls spoke in half-whispered awe. Some wondered aloud if her calm was sorcery, a last trickster's defence before judgment fell. Vespera was roused by rough hands just after sunrise. The chains remained, but her captors handled her with more wariness than before. The memory of last night hovered between them, its edges jagged and strange. She was led, not shoved, but not gently, through the corridors carved from living rock, the veins of the moonstone tree glimmering faintly above their heads. Smoke from last night's fires curled in the air, weaving between the banners that still hung limp with dew. With every step, she pieced back together her armor of defiance. She would not look cowed, even now. She would not gift her accusers with her fear. Caelron awaited her in a chamber far from the courts, its windows framing the ghost-pale landscape. No throne here, no audience, only the Alpha King at a heavy wooden table, flanked by shadow and silence. He did not rise as she entered. His voice, when he spoke, carried the gravel of the mountains, with a raw undercurrent that suggested violence only barely restrained. "Sit!" She was unshackled. The door thudded closed behind her. Vespera settled across from him, fingers folded, face as composed as she could muster. The room was cold, and yet sweat prickled down her spine. Caelron regarded her long enough that she felt herself being dissected, his eyes peeling back, not just her clothes, but her memories, her secrets, her scars. "You did well with the pup," he conceded finally, as if the words cost him dearly. Most would have left it. She met his gaze. "I have been left behind myself." A silence thick as pitch settled. Caelron watched her, lips curled into something too sharp to be a smile.
"Do you know what they say of you?"
he asked. "Among your kin, among mine." Vespera angled her chin, mouth set. "That I betrayed my pack, that I fed secrets to our enemies, both lies." He measured her, weighing something unsaid. "And yet here you are, in chains. Was that injustice, or was it necessity?" "Necessity," Her laugh was brittle. For whom? My pack needed a scapegoat. I was convenient. And your court? My court? He interrupted, voice low. Honor's truth above all. Even mercy. She eyed him, noting the lines carved around his eyes, the scars that whispered of loss. Then judge me with truth. What proof have you? Other than stories told in hate and haste. His fingers drummed the table, slow and rhythmic. Wolves can smell fear, he said at last, his tone shifting. Most accused beg or crumble. You face me instead, his eyes narrowed. Why? Vespera held his gaze unflinching. Fear would not serve me. It would not make the lies less bitter, nor would it stop your hand if you sought my death. She paused, letting the tremor in her voice pass. All I have now is my truth. Her words landed heavy. He stared, as if he could rip the soul from her bones and see it bare before him. Tell me then, Caelron prompted, voice a low command. Tell me again, and count nothing hidden. Why did you leave your pack the night the witchwood fell on your border? Why were you gone? Vespera inhaled slowly, her breath measured, so her voice would not break. She saw the moonlit trees flash behind her eyelids, the panic of that night. I didn't leave, she said. I was sent. My pack's alpha sent me to check the southern trap lines. Alone. When I returned, I found the youngest dead. The rest, my family, were gathered already, pointing at me. No one would listen. Caelron watched her closely. You did not run. No. Her voice was steady now, honed to the bitter sharpness of survival. I tried to save what I could, but the accusation was easier than the truth. And so, here I am. Finally, Caelron's composure cracked. Just for an instant, a brief flicker of curiosity, perhaps respect, or something wilder he couldn't name. And yet, he murmured, you still show kindness. Song for a broken pup, while shackled and waiting to die, Vespera straightened, pride flaring in her chest. My pack may cast me out, your court may judge me, but I will not let them make me a thing of hate. Cruelty is easy. Survival, true survival, is something else. Her words haunted the silence. Caelron leaned in, a predator weighing a new, dangerous game. Are you not afraid, Vespera, daughter of Tile? She stared back, fierce and unapologetic. I am more afraid of becoming what they believe than I am of dying here. You can cage a wolf, king, but you cannot unmake what she is. The silence that followed was thick with unshed thunder. Yet in that hush, something unspoken passed between them. The smallest fracture at the edge of the Alpha King's certainty, a reluctant respect that flickered like the first hint of dawn after a too long night. Outside, the moon retreated behind clouds, but in that somber chamber, the balance of the moon court had shifted, if only by a breath. Night never truly descended on the moon court. Instead, it folded itself around the palace, in endless dimness, soft velvet shadows, stained by dusty moonbeams wandering listlessly through high latticed windows. By morning, the air in Vespera's chamber had thickened, weighted not with rest, but with an almost physical uncertainty. She awoke to the scent of wet fur and the subtle, ever-present undercurrent of agitation. Beneath her locked door, she could smell the wolves, the anxious, unwashed loam of their bodies pressed close to the stone. Their presence ebbed and flowed, as though they struggled within themselves, sometimes only one, pacing, the blunt scrape of claws audible through the door. Sometimes more, a hush of breathing, occasional growls too soft to be challenged, too urgent to be dismissed as nothing. Vespera sat with her back to the narrow cot, trying to quiet her heartbeat. She could sense each one their lack of sleep, the way hunger tightened them, but was overlooked in favor of something else, watching, sniffing, waiting, as if the answer to whatever gnawed at the pack might curl from under her door if they only looked long enough. Servants came, eyes averted, to place food outside her door: plain, rough bread, a chipped bowl of bone broth thin as rainwater, a single apple bruised to softness. She could feel their curiosity, their palpable discomfort. Someone hissed at them in low-born dialect, and the hurried patter of feet receded. The silence that followed was jagged. The wolves didn't move. Later, the second-in-command came to fetch Caelron to his study, and Vespera overheard the muffled argument that bled through the stone. The voice was Eric, harsh and rough as knotted rope. "It is the girl," he muttered, the way only a trusted subordinate could. "3 of the youngest haven't slept. Even Mira refuses the hunt for her sake," he grumbled. "They circle her chamber. Do you not feel it, your beast?" He worries at her scent, as if she were a lost whelp. "There's danger in that, my king." A pause, and Caelron's answer, sharp as a winter blade: "It is nothing. They are unsettled by the coming thaw and the changes in the moon court." "Mind your thoughts, Eric." Eric, emboldened by years at the king's side, did not yield. His voice lowered, but Vespera could make out every syllable, shaping her own sense of dread. "I will mind the pack, but Caelron, you must mind yourself. There is precedent for this. Twice before, the blood was weakened when the king's beast took an interest beyond the bond. A paw stretched until it trembled. She is nothing." Caelron spat, but the certainty Vespera had heard before was gone. The pack heard it too. Their silence deepened, uneasy. The stone snapped with the violence of his retreat down the hall, and Vespera, pressed tight to the door, swore she could feel the air rip